All right, we're about to tackle one of the biggest, most fundamental ideas in sales. For, decades, salespeople have been trained to gear up for a fight, right? To have all these clever comebacks for every objection a customer could ever throw at them. But what if that entire way of thinking is just wrong?
What if all those objections, you know the ones, it's too expensive, I gotta think about it, I need to check with my spouse, what if they aren't actually obstacles to conquer at the end of a conversation? What if they're really just a symptom? A bright, flashing signal that the whole sales conversation was built on a shaky foundation from the very beginning. I'm telling you, this one shift in how you see it is the key to a completely different and way more effective way of selling.
And this whole idea comes from a pretty surprising place. Get this. Cole Gordon, who now runs a $30 million a year sales training company, started out as the literal worst performer on his team. So, when he went to study the top salespeople, he figured he'd find all these Jedi mind tricks for handling objections. But instead, he found something, well, frankly, it was shocking. They weren't getting any objections to handle in the first place.
And that discovery right there, that's the central mystery we're going to unpack. See, the best in the world aren't better at fighting objections. They are absolute masters at making them totally irrelevant. They set up their conversations so perfectly that by the time they get to the end, there's just nothing left to object to. The real question is, how on earth do they do that?
Well, the answer is in a framework that Cole Gordon figured out, and he calls it the 7 beliefs. You should think of it like a psychological code. Before anyone, and I mean anyone, decides to buy anything, their brain has to subconsciously accept 7 specific beliefs. If just one of them is missing, you're pretty much guaranteed to get an objection. But if you build all 7, the sale basically becomes inevitable.
And yeah, that code has a magic number, 7. The whole point of the sales conversation completely changes. It's not about pitching anymore. It's about methodically, carefully, building these 7 core beliefs, one after the other.
And here they are: pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, and trust. Each one of these is a critical piece of the puzzle that has to click into place in the prospect's mind. So let's break them down, starting with the one that gets the whole engine started.
It all kicks off with belief number 1, pain. And this makes so much sense if you think about it. Every sale has to start here. Now, this isn't always like physical pain. It's the gap, the space between their current reality and the future they really want. If there's no problem to solve, well, there's no value you can offer, which means there's absolutely no reason for a sale to even happen.
Now, this gap can show up in 2 different ways. You've got a pain gap, which is all about fixing a problem just to get back to normal, like treating knee pain. Then there's the desire gap, which is about going from good to great, like someone taking longevity treatments, not because they're sick, but because they want to perform at their absolute peak. Figuring out which gap you're dealing with is the very first step.
Okay, but just having a problem isn't quite enough. That brings us to belief number 2, doubt. And here is where it gets a little counterintuitive. This is about building their doubt not in you, but in themselves. They have to come to believe that they can't solve this problem on their own, or that trying to would just be too slow, too expensive, or way too hard. They need to see the value in a proven roadmap.
This is the question that unlocks that doubt belief. It just forces this little moment of self-reflection. If this gap in their life is so important, what stopped them from closing it up until now? The answer they give themselves is what establishes their need for your help.
This leads us right to belief number 3, cost. And this one is the ultimate antidote to "I need to think about it." Because it's not about the price tag on your product. It's about making the prospect feel the huge, massive emotional and financial cost of doing nothing. Urgency isn't something you create, it's something you uncover when waiting around feels like the most expensive possible choice.
Think about that Tony Robbins technique where he has people visualize the immense, long-term pain of not changing their lives. A brilliant sales conversation does the exact same thing. It takes the future cost of just staying put and makes it feel real, visceral, and present right now.
But here's the thing. Focusing only on pain can actually backfire. It can lead to paralysis. And that's exactly why belief number 4, desire, is so critical.
Pain gets you moving, for sure, but desire gives you a destination. The prospect needs an absolutely crystal clear, compelling vision of that amazing future that's waiting for them once this problem is gone.
And this isn't just some nice-sounding theory. There's actually data to back it up. A study by the persuasion expert Robert Cialdini found that ads focusing only on the pain of not getting a vaccine were way less effective than the ads that combine that pain with the gain. You know, the positive benefits. You absolutely need both to get people to act.
So once you've established the why, you've built up the pain, the doubt, the cost, and the desire, you then have to build the practical bridge to yes. And that's where these last 3 beliefs come into play. These are the logistical locks that really secure the decision.
The 5th belief, money, is fascinating because it's actually 2 totally separate things. First, you've got resources. Do they physically have the cash? That's a real constraint. But second, and way more common, is willingness. If someone isn't willing to invest, it's almost never a true money objection. It's usually a smokescreen that tells you that you haven't built a strong enough belief in the cost of inaction.
Next up is support. You know, a decision is almost never made in a vacuum. The prospect needs to believe that the key people in their life, whether that's a spouse, a business partner, or their team, are going to be on board with this choice. A great salesperson figures out who these people are early on and makes sure they're part of the conversation, which totally prevents that classic, "I need to talk to" objection later.
And finally, belief number 7, trust. And of course, they have to trust you and your company. But the most powerful, most bulletproof form of trust is in the methodology itself. They have to believe that your process, your system, is the one specific key that is going to unlock the result they want. This is why building that trust in your method is so absolutely critical. It's not about just listing off features. It's about reframing their entire point of view. Your explanation has to show them why everything they've tried in the past didn't work. Not because of them, but because of a flawed approach, and why your method is the one that's fundamentally, completely different. So, okay, understanding the 7 beliefs is one thing, but turning them into a real, concrete playbook for your very next conversation, that's a whole other thing. So, how do we actually do it? Well, here's a fascinating paradox. Does the specific script you use actually matter? The answer is yes and no. The what, the 7 beliefs themselves, are universal. They are non-negotiable. You have to build them. But the how, the exact words you choose to use, that's flexible. As long as your script is designed to architect these 7 beliefs in the right order, it's going to work. Let's just boil this whole framework down into a simple 4-step playbook you can use right away. 1. Diagnose the gap first. Are you solving a pain or are you fulfilling a desire? 2. Architect belief, don't just pitch. You have to systematically build all 7 beliefs before you ever bring up your offer. 3. Reframe their past to build trust in your new method. And finally, and maybe most critically, number 4, make inaction expensive. Amplify that emotional, financial, and energetic cost of just doing nothing. And this brings us to a final, much bigger question. If the real secret to persuasion isn't about pushing a product, but about carefully building a set of beliefs, well, this doesn't just apply to sales, does it? It applies to leadership, to our relationships, to any conversation where we're trying to inspire someone to take action. What would change if we started approaching all of our important conversations this way? I'd really love to know what you think.